Hi friends, it's Becky, and today I want to share a project with you that is kind of a variation of one that I've done recently. Last Saturday, I joined Danielle Wicks on her channel for Seed Bead Saturday, and I shared a project using size 10 delicas and Miyuki Tila beads to create like a ladder bracelet that is stitched onto silver silk. And silver silk is this fine gauge wire that has been knitted into a tube and then flattened into a flat mesh. There's actually several different types of silver silk, but this is the one that I'm going to be using. It's silver silk flat mesh for this project. And you end up with a fun bracelet that has these nice clean edges, and it makes it pretty easy to do the laddering in there once you've got the edges brick stitched with your beads. So I'm going to be using in this project some of the 8/0 seed beads and check tile beads that came in the September curated collections from Beads to Live By. And so we've got these gray opal silver lined 8/0 seed beads that I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using this hematite color flat mesh. There are other colors that they have, but I thought that that would be a really great Halloween-y type of combination for us to have with that. I'm going to be using some 6-pound Fireline. You can use any size of beading needle that you want to use because the holes on the 8/0 seed beads are pretty large, so multiple passes will fit through. We're also not going to be doing that many passes through the check glass beads. And then you'll need some hardware for finishing it. And I've just got some 20mm ribbon ends. And these are, it's really hard to find ribbon ends that don't have that dimpling on it. So I was really happy to find these smooth ones. I got them on Amazon in like a multi-pack where you get a whole bunch of different sizes of them, and so I got those, and these were the 20mm ones out of there. I'll put a link in the description to this pack of ribbon ends if you wanted. And then you'll want a closure. I'm going to use these gunmetal colored toggle clasps and some jump rings. You want something to cut your thread with, and some pliers for closing the what is it called? Closing the ribbon ends and attaching jump rings. So I've got a couple of those. And something you can measure with so that you can do all of this with ease. So for me, I have a 7.5-inch wrist. So I cut 2 lengths of 8-inch long pieces of silver silk. And then I stitched with brick stitch about 7 inches of beads along the edges. So there's about a half an inch on each side, and that's going to be for folding it over and attaching it with the crimp or with the ribbon ends. And then once you've got, and there's 2 of them that we're going to do that with. And let me show you how to get started with it. For this demonstration, I'm going to be using this piece of amber silver silk because the black Fireline, or not Fireline, yeah, it is Fireline. The black Fireline that I'm using will show up better on camera against that color rather than disappearing into the hematite silver silk. So I just want you guys to be able to see this, and this will be a shorter piece. I just want you guys to be able to see it when I'm doing this. So you'll want to start, as I said, start about a half an inch away from the edge. Once you've selected the part of the wire that you're going to start with, go ahead and put the needle through so you can get your thread in there. And you're going to want to leave enough of a tail that you can put a needle on the other end and weave it in. And I just tie an overhand knot at this point to keep the thread from slipping through. It's not a super secure thing. It's not the only way to secure it, but it just keeps that thread from moving as I'm going through here. So I'm going to start brick stitch by picking up 2 8/0 seed beads, and if you can see, we have these little sort of bumps in the knitting. I've got one bump here that I've got that tied into, and I'm just going to jump 2 bumps away and put my needle through that little loop there. Now this first part is going to be a little wonky. We will come back and attach this a little bit better on that side, so it's going to be tipped a little bit to the side until we come back and fix it afterwards. That's one of the reasons why we leave a tail, so that we can fix it afterwards with that. Let me move some of these things off of my desk so that they don't catch on things, because I don't need this tape measure until later. There we go. So that's the start of the brick stitch. And then I'm going to continue along here by picking up 1 of my seed beads, finding that next little bump. You want to make sure you get at least 2 legs of the knit stitch on that edge through the needle. And then once I've got it on there, I'm going to sew right back up through that bead that I just placed. And it puts it right smack dab on the edge, right where I want it to be. Let's do another one a little bit closer. So I picked up my 8/0 seed bead. I'm going to go through here. And then sew back up through that seed bead. You can pinch the seed bead and the flat mesh to hold it still so it doesn't go rattling around with the rest of the thread while you're pulling it through. That can be really helpful. Let's do one more just to reinforce. And you see how the thread isn't super visible from the sides. It's just a little bit visible, but not a lot. It does keep it very cleanly onto this flat mesh edge, and it makes it look kind of smooth. So you're going to continue like that for a while, adhering or stitching those beads along the edge, and just keep going until you get close to about maybe an inch away from the end. And then you're going to want to start counting your beads, because the number of beads you stitch on will matter for when we're working with our tile beads. So I count 5 at a time. I just cover up the rest of them and make sure that I can see 5. So that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 51, 52, 53. Let me double check that. That's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. Okay, so I've got 53. We're at 57. 53. And so I want there to be a multiple of 3 because our attaching our tile beads is going to be worked over 3 seed beads. So if I've got 53, let's bring that up. To a multiple of 3. So now I've got 54 on here. And let's measure how much longer I need to go on this. So I want 7 inches of beads. And I am at just a little over 6. So I need to add in multiples of 3 until I get the length that I want. So if I've got 54 and I add 3 more, that'll be 57. So let's add 3 more and then check my length. 1, 'This way you can adjust it for a size that will fit your wrist. If you determine how much you want to stitch on, and I suggest about a 1/2 inch shorter than your wrist size. So I think that was 3 that I stitched on there, so that is 57. And that's pretty close to 6.5. Let's add 3 more. That'll bring us to a count of 60. That's 58. 59. And 60. And if it's almost 7 inches, but adding 3 more would put it over 7 inches, I'm going to err on the side of just a little shorter rather than a little longer. And that is what I've got. It's just a couple little bits shorter than 7. If I add 3 more, that'll make it a little bit too long for me. So I'm going to stop right there. Remember the number of beads that you did on one of these so that you can do the second one with the exact same amount of beads. That way they will match up when you're doing that. Now, to tack down this end, remember I told you it was going to be a little wobbly right at the beginning. You're going to do this on each end with the tail end or this end after you get to the bottom of it. I'm just going to take my needle and thread and go under and over to the side a little bit from that bead. Just go through my flat mesh with my needle and thread, and that just gives us a more secure piece right there. And then I'm going to go back up through this bead. And this is the way you can weave in your ends and also start a new thread, because if you need to add more thread, just do a zigzag through these beads back and forth like this. And go about 5 or 6 beads away from where you're at. And then reverse your direction. And you can go more if you want, but the point and the best thing to remember is that you want to go back again, because reversing the direction helps sort of secure the thread so that it isn't unravelly. And then once you've got that end secured, you can cut that. Now the amount of thread that you need for this is an arm's length for each of these. I just pulled off a wingspan, and once I was done with the first one, I just used that same thread for the second one, because that's a wingspan is basically 2 arm lengths. So I've got those, and then you'll want another wingspan's worth for doing your laddering. So just like I did with that one, I'm just going to zigzag through here. I'm going to go about, wait, I want 1 down, yeah. Let's start here, and I'm going to go up 5 and then back down a few more. And again, this is how you add thread to this project if you need to do it. Alright, let's go back. See, if I leave it without going and I pull on this, it's going to shorten that end. But after I reverse it, oh no. Go through a couple of these until I get to that bead at the end. Oop, I caught that guy in there. Now, if I pull on this, it doesn't shorten this, so I know that my thread is secure. Now I can start my laddering. I was very pleased to discover that the same stitch pattern that I came up with for the size 10 Delica and Miyuki tile beads, or Tilas, was exactly what I need for the check tile beads and the 8/0 seed beads. And it goes a little bit like this. You're going to have your groups of 3 seed beads on either side, like that, and then your tile bead in here. We're going to go from this first seed bead through the first hole in the tile bead, through the first seed bead on the other side, over to the middle in this group of 3 seed bead, back through that first hole in the tile bead, through that middle seed bead or the second seed bead on the other side, top and bottom, like that, and then through the third one, through the second hole in the tile bead, through this third bead here, back through this middle bead, this second one, through the second hole, and then we're going to skip over here after we go through this third seed bead, and we're going to do the same thing. First seed bead, first hole, first seed bead, second seed bead, first hole, second seed bead, third seed bead, second hole, third seed bead, second seed bead, second hole, third seed bead, and then we keep going and do that again. If you want to take a better look at this graphic, it is available on Danielle Wick's website. She uploaded it there after we did our live together, and you can take a look at it. If you downloaded it, do a screenshot here if you want, feel free. That way you can have something to reference while you're doing this. But I'll put a link to that in the description below, as well as the link to our live, so that you can see how we did this with the other types of seed beads. Now, other shapes and sizes of seed beads, you'll probably end up having a different type of thread pattern, but I was really pleased that this works just as well for our 8/0 seed beads as it did for the size 10 delicas. So here I am coming out of my first seed bead in this group of 3, and I'll be working with this group of 3 here and this tile bead. This first bead is going to be the most fiddly, because after we get the first, I think 2 of these connected, the rest of them will just be so much easier. And it's just because it's not connected yet. So I'm coming out of that first seed bead, going through the first hole in my tile bead, and always make sure that both holes are clear before you sew it on. And then I'm going to go through the first seed bead, and this is first going from right to left. And wait a minute, what are you doing? How did this tie a knot? That's weird. You know what? My thread is doing weird things. I'm just going to go through this loop. Do not know how that happened. Bloop. Okay. See, it's a little fiddly with these guys being in different places. I'm just going to hold both of these in my right hand to kind of get these together. So now that I've gone through that first pass, I'm going to jump over here to the second bead in this group of 3. And then back through the same hole in that tile bead that I already went through. And I can angle my needle to go through that second seed bead on the other side. Give that a little bit of a tightening up. Now I can go through the third seed bead in that group of 3. And sometimes you can angle it with your needle so that you're going through that seed bead, through that second hole in the tile bead, and then through that third seed bead on the other side, like a straight shot. It makes it a little bit easy when you've got a rhythm and you're down to it. It goes fairly quickly. Like, you can finish it in maybe a half an hour. And then I jumped back over here to this second seed bead in this group of 3, that middle bead. I'm going to go back through that second hole in the tile bead, and then through the third seed bead in that group of 3 on the side facing me. And then scooch over here to that next seed bead on the row. And that's going to be the first seed bead in my next group of 3. So then I can pick up a tile bead, and once again, make sure that all those holes are clear. Go through that first seed bead on the other side, through the second seed bead, that group of 3, through that second hole in your tile bead, or sorry, first hole in the tile bead, and then through that second seed bead in that group of 3. Make sure we're not catching on anything. Into that third seed bead, the second hole of the tile bead, and the third seed bead on the other side. Once again, just working in that group of 3. There will be a gap between these. It's totally fine. It is the nature of this. If I did it just over 2 seed beads, these would be too crowded together. You could probably do 2 seed beads and these check tile beads if you used 6/0 seed beads. But I'm using 8/0s. I think 6/0s might be a project for another day. So you see how much easier that second one was than the first one? And it will continue that way as you go down, sort of laddering through, adding the tile beads in here, stitching them into place, using our seed beads as our foundation. These beads that we stitched on with brick stitch. Go all the way through. Like that. All right. So I am going to do this exact same thing that I just did with these 3 all the way down the line until I get to the very end. And when I get to the end, I will show you how to finish it up with our findings, and then we can wear that. And in case you're worried about that little bit of silver silk, the amber silver silk that I was demonstrating on, if you set your notifications or click that bell so you get notified of my next tutorial, I will be demonstrating how to turn that into this earring. So that should be a really fun thing to do. It starts the same way this one did, by doing brick stitch around the silver silk, but then I'm going to continue the brick stitch and then add some lentil beads and some more seed beads around the edges. So that's going to be a really fun tutorial, and that will be up probably either later today or tomorrow, depending on other things that happen in my life. But right now I'm going to finish this so that we can get this part all wrapped up for this tutorial. Right, so now that I have all of these in here, I had come out of this third seed bead in this group of 3, and then I just started zigzagging through the seed beads like I did before when I wove in my ends on the other end. And I'm just backing up and reversing direction to go back the other way. And once I've got this all woven in, I will be absolutely done with the needle and thread part of this. You can use a thread burner if you'd like. I usually just cut close to the bead and call it good. And now it's time to attach our hardware and turn this into a bracelet. Had to grab some jump rings for that. Now I'll be using these sort of wider nose pliers to help secure these ends. They are soft enough that I can pinch it with my fingers in order to get it to clamp down. But I want to prep the silver silk first. And I'm just going to fold this in once and then twice, and then give it a little bit of a smush so it flattens out. That's just so I don't have any tail ends of my wire poking out. All right, once. And I like to use these tweezer nose pliers because I get a nice sharp bend on the flat mesh with them. And then one more time. There we go. This also gives it a little bit more for the teeth to grab onto when we put this in here. All right, so I'm going to put this guy on here, and I want to make sure that my teeth are not closed on the beads on either side. I just push that in with my finger, because when we close it up with the pliers, if it's on top of the beads, it will crush the beads. All right, so now that that's on there pretty well, I'm going to give that a smush there, a smush there, and a smush across both. And that's secured. Let's do it on the other side. Two folds, and then a smush. And I like to smush it together like that too when I do this on the flat mesh. Give that a smush. Get these guys together. Let's get our other end on. And again, just make sure that when we put this in here, we are not anywhere close to crushing a little too long. I want to get these guys in here. We do not want the teeth to be on top of any of these beads. Okay, there we go. Moving that out. And again, I'm just using my fingers to do the initial close, making sure that we're not going to be crushing any beads. This one's a little bit closer, so there we go. One, two. All right. There we have that. Let's get a toggle clasp on. On the toggle part, I like to have at least 2 jump rings, just so that it has more maneuverability, but you don't need to for the loop part. So let's open up our jump ring like that. You just twist it open, put it on your hardware. Give that a close. All right. I'm just going to attach this to my toggle clasp first, or toggle first. Then take the second one and attach it to my bracelet hardware. All right. So there we are. All you need is some silver silk flat mesh, some 8/0 seed beads, and some check tile beads, and a couple of 20mm ribbon ends. And you've got a bracelet. I will put a link in the description to where you can find flat mesh. Some colors of flat mesh may be sold out or not available on the Silver Silk site, which I will be linking to. Sometimes you can find those colors on the Sam's Bead Shop site, because they usually have maybe some custom colors or a couple of things of flat mesh that would go with one of the other the boxes that they put together. I think that's where I got this amber flat mesh from that I used. But also, keep an eye out. I will be publishing this video as soon as it is done, so we can do that. I will put a link to the live that I had with Danielle, as well as to where you can find the graphic. And if you're looking for some inspiration for things to do with these ginkgos, these are the Ginkgo Kiss bracelet that I made with the September curated bead box, and it looks fantastic. I'll put a link to that tutorial in the description below. It's a tutorial that I published earlier this year using some different curated bead boxes, but it's a lot of fun to use ginkgos with, so I thought that might be a fun thing to introduce you to. But there we go. It's nice and Halloween-y. Here, let me put it on my other... Actually, we can put both of these on here. Do they stack? Are they stackable? I don't know. Hey, you know, there we go. All right, that was super fun. And we'll do this one in just a little bit. Thanks a lot for hanging out with me, and happy beading. Bye.